economy. There's, of course, those things that are made for domestic consumption, and then those things that are made for international consumption. Now, with the urban population set to go from 390 million to 530 million, and the population of the whole country set to go from 1.1 billion to almost 1.6 billion, it looks, like one of the only sectors that can really absorb that kind of increase in population would be the manufacturing sector. Okay, and when you talk about manufacturing sector, you of course have, again, manufacturing of items meant for domestic consumption, and then of course there's a vast market in, in the international sphere. Now, when it comes to international, though, one of the probably the most economical way of getting things across is by ships, right? So, what about port development in India? How much is that going on? I'll give you an example. The entire philosophy looks to me in a country like China, for example, which has pretty much cornered the manufacturing market, has been manufacturing-centric urban centers. What I mean by that is, if you go to a place like Ningbo in China, they have, factories lined up for miles, shells, and companies go there and say, I'll take that one, and the government says, how many people do you need? And you give, so they say 5,000 people, no problem, here's what it's going to cost you. However, once the items are made, they're usually exported out of China. And there's a port nearby, okay, where it's like, if you stand from a distance and watch it, it's like a, what you call manufacturing setup. Trucks come in, unload, go, load, come back, etc. And then, if you go just barely outside this manufacturing, what you call highway, if you will, you find a gigantic center for housing all the employees, okay? And they could have several 100,000 people living in this manufacturing-centric urban center, Do you think it is time for India to consider a plan such as that one in order to, create employment for, obviously, India has to think about how in God's name are we going to employ all those people that are going to come into the marketplace, okay? And secondly, what is the smartest way of doing it? And looks to me like even though the population is huge, going, export potential would be a major player. So if you could take that question and say, where does all this figure in the planning process, and how are we going to approach this? That would be great. And anyone of you, go ahead.
Try to take a stab on it. I think the issues that you raised, this Delhi-Mumbai industrial corridor, that's, I think, is answering many of the issues that you raised. The whole concept there is that you build a high-speed corridor between the two major industrial centers in India, and around that you build, as I mentioned, industrial regions, 5 industrial regions of 200 square kilometers, manufacturing center. And what they are also imagining there, that each industrial area will be focused on certain industries. And then I mentioned 5, and I mentioned that 15 more industrial areas will come up, which will be 100 square kilometers. And in each of them, they will be focusing on the manufacturing this thing. So what's going to happen is that I said 15 industrial areas of 100 square kilometers, 5 industrial regions of 200, 250, each will focus on certain manufacturing this thing. And each of these manufacturing areas will have both, as you said, ready-made factories, social infrastructure, meaning housing. So you create these jobs where it's answering 2-3 questions. One, that on a longer term, to create jobs, we have to focus on manufacturing. Service sector, I think, over time will, the job opportunity that it can create, we today have 54% of our GDP in the service sector, but I think real answer in creating employment, as you rightly said, is in the manufacturing sector. Long-term employment can only be created if we can enhance our manufacturing sector. So that's the industrial corridor. So what I have been also saying here, that we should try to replicate that in many other places. I said like a Bhopal, Indore in Madhya Pradesh, or a Chennai, Pondicherry in Tamil Nadu, build a high-speed corridor. And in this DMIC, there are also 4 ports that are going to come up. It's just not, and airports are going to come up. So it's a multimodal rail, road, airports, ports. So as I've been saying, these sort of high-speed transportation corridors we built, around which we build manufacturing centers, and which are the potential cities of the future. That answers our job creations that are required in manufacturing, also helps in creating the urbanization.
So that brings me up to another question. In order to be competitive in the global economy, okay, you want your transportation costs to be as low as possible. And from that, it follows to reason that most of your manufacturing centers should be close to the seaside, either on the west or the east, okay? Which means that, you know, like you said, from Pondicherry to maybe even to Calcutta, you know, that entire eastern region, you know, is ripe for...
Shorter, like Pondicherry to Chennai.
Okay, Pondicherry to Chennai. Right. So, you know, so that of course is a no-brainer, because, you know, you've got ports there, you can ship things out and all that. Now, will that cause a massive shift in population from the centers of the country, okay, to the, what you call the seaside port, cities, if you will, and what kind of social upheaval will that cause when something like that happens, you know?
Let me combine my answer to both the first and the second question. You know, historically, India has not followed an export-led growth strategy. Unlike the smaller South Asian tigers, we have actually followed a manufacturing policy that is primarily underpinned by the domestic economy. Whereas India has followed, or let's say in the absence of any clear policy, India has grown to become an exporter of services. So unlike China, which has got such a predominant position of manufactured services, India had taken a lead in the export of services. There is a joke that China produces, India installs. For example, in solar panels, for example, China is producing huge amount of solar panels, but India is importing a huge amount and installing them in the villages. So the real issue is that both manufacturing and services are going to be the pistons of growth. And with productivity increasing in the agricultural sector, obviously, as Mr. Paul has said, the population is going to move into urban centers. Within urban centers, you're going to move into manufacturing and you're going to move into services. The issue that you raised about competitiveness and coastal development is a very serious question, because if you see the social imbalance in the country, we have close to 142 districts which we call Naxalite dominated, or where the arm of law doesn't reach. They're all in the broadly non-coastal areas. They're in central portions of India. We have the northeast to develop, we have the north to develop. So purely banking on a policy of coastal development will lead to tremendous social upheavals, which the country cannot afford. In fact, will lead to, is talking about the future, it is already leading to. As I said, 142 districts out of 560 is not a joke, you know, in terms of the amount of people who feel they have received no service from the state. So and I think therefore, willy-nilly, we are moving towards a transportation-based solution that does not make inland manufacturing as uncompetitive as should it have been port-led. For example, there are two, what Mr. Paul referred to is actually two spurs. One is called the Dedicated Freight Corridor Western India, Mumbai to Delhi. The other is the Dedicated Freight Corridor East, which is from Ludhiana to Calcutta, to Dankuni actually. So there are two freight corridors. Around the DFC West is a separate project called DMIC, which is the Delhi-Mumbai Industrial Corridor, which is townships. So as you can see, and whether it's the Ahmedabad-Delhi high-speed link or the Madras-Bangalore, Chennai-Bangalore high-speed links, there are 5 high-speed train links branching out from coastal India towards inland India, if I may put it broadly. So the whole idea is that the transportation, both inland water transportation as well as rail links, and the National Highway Program is anyway on, should actually see a little more balanced growth of manufacturing activity rather than having it completely based around coastal areas. That should be the aim of the country. How far we succeed is an open question. And port-based development obviously is not something to be willed away, because that is what makes it competitive. But the major ports in India, India has 11 major ports, which are under the federal government. And today it has 149 minor ports, which are under the jurisdiction of the state maritime boards. You will find that India has been saved by the rapid growth of private ports, whereas the historical old port trusts, Mumbai, Kolkata, etc., Chennai, have all, I won't say stagnated, but have moved at a far slower pace than the growth of the economy. Around these ports, if you take one example, the Adani port at Mundra, there is the port, which is the gateway to the world. Surrounding it is the SEZ. Then there is the power plant. So you are actually getting, and obviously there is housing and stuff that's happening. So you're getting, in a sense, what Mr. Paul has said, that private entrepreneurs in PPP formats of port development are not just building a port, because that is not enough, but within the port itself is leading to the development of the hinterland, both for industry, both core and social infrastructure.
So, I absolutely agree with Vinayak. I don't think there's the depopulation. It's going to be a mixed thing because of the transportation and because of the several other factors that drive the movement of industry and population. But I'd like to share a slightly different perspective. You know, the question as it was framed was basically in comparison to China. Now, it's quite possible that even if we build these corridors top down, think of, you know, conceptually in whatever 5 years' time, it will be significantly better than today, but is it as good as the best in the world? That may or may not be. Because if you want to be globally competitive, you need to create the infrastructure which gives you potentially the best in the world kind of quality. Therefore, I do see an opportunity where you kind of build pockets of very high quality infrastructure, which then gives you exactly like the Adani example, or even better that Vinayak was mentioning, which does not solve the problem for 1 billion people, but it creates an island which is world class, which could then become a very competitive geography from where to manufacture and export. That would drive some change in terms of population movements, but these islands would probably can be replicated. So that's another perspective for the same.
Talking about that, I totally agree with you. That was why I asked that question about the social upheaval that can take place right in the heart of India. I read somewhere, and I don't know how far this is true, but is there a project much akin to the Panama Canal, for example, that will connect the West Coast to the East Coast, providing a transportation thing that will kind of, alleviate that kind of a social upheaval that you foresee?
Can I handle that? But this whole concept of river linking has been an exciting concept in India from the time there was an airline pilot called Captain Dastur, who formulated the river linking plan connecting both the Himalayan rivers and what is called the Deccan rivers, the southern rivers, into a grand master plan. It was popularly called the Dastur plan to do exactly what you said, not just to provide a solution for transportation, but simultaneously to bring water into unirrigated lands, irrigation, and also to balance the flood and drought-prone districts so that water in a flood is not wasted when somebody else has got a drought. So it was supposed to cover, and hydroelectricity produced at the same time. So it was supposed to cover transportation, hydroelectricity, flood drought mitigation, and irrigation. A four-pronged attack called the Dastur plan. When Mr. Vajpayee was the Prime Minister, he actually revived this whole river linking plan. Immediately after the National Highway Plan he announced, he made Suresh Prabhu, the ex-Minister for Electricity, the chairman of the River Linking Commission. An excellent document was produced. It had many critics also, which said that it will lead to catastrophic effects on environment, etc. It had many critics also. But fundamentally, I am one of those people who believe that it had elements in it which were extremely sound and would lead to a huge national economic revival if done exactly the way you said it. Unfortunately, because of partisan politics, one of the first things that the UPA government did in 2004 was to junk that report. And many efforts by industry chambers, including the CII and others, and I have participated in those, to revive the interest in river linking, inland water transportation, all of that does not seem to get a receptivity from the UPA government because they tend to think that the credit will go to the erstwhile Vajpayee government. But that's a short answer to
There's always some
It's-
politics
it's,
behind everything. Now, moving away from physical infrastructure, let me pose a question on telecommunications development, in the country. As you are aware, the more global business becomes, the more important, your telecommunications become. Okay. As a matter of fact, I have a friend whose son started a company in the United States, got incredible venture money from some of the big guys, but the immigration people wouldn't give him a visa, so he moved back to India, and he's doing the same business from here. I mean, developing the software and producing it here, which is good for the country. It's good. Yes. So, and that, seems to be an example of how, venture capitalists could be enormously influential in creating that kind of a business infrastructure, if you will, which will enable the producers in this country to be almost invisible, okay, as to where all the product is coming from by using proper telecommunications technologies, the internet and, all that kind of neat little thing, to increase the employment base in this country, So maybe you can touch on what the venture money is doing, because, I can only think of how Silicon Valley would have done it, and you guys are doing a great job here.
Sure, I think there's no doubt that there has been a telecom revolution in this country, which has fundamentally driven a lot of change in many industries. IT being one of them, KPO, BPO, these are known stories. But even going forward, I think we see business plans regularly, and we see entrepreneurs regularly who are looking to build sort of commerce sites which would help them to target businesses or customers across the world. And it's very industry specific, so we have different views on them. But that is certainly helping entrepreneurs here to reach out to customers overseas. And in that context, it can hardly be, again, the broadband penetration in India is relatively poor at the moment. But again, I have no doubts that this can be very easily bridged in a short period of time, given if we get the right focus on it. I think that can be done very quickly.
I just got handed a love note that I have only 5 minutes left. So let me come to the final leg, if you will, of the infrastructure stool, and that's power. Okay. It's no secret that, the blackouts in various parts of the country are something to be, talked about. Okay. Now, there's one thing that I've noticed in this country. Almost every business, whether it's manufacturing or whether it is software or anything, has a generator. I know that my unit in Pune has a generator. Everybody has a generator. Over 75% of that time, that generator probably sits idle. Okay. Has there been any move to tap into that latent power that's sitting there? In other words, those generators that are there sitting idle could be running, providing power into a grid, which could then power up, factories and at times when, you could store energy when there's a blackout, or in a region where there's blackout, because at any given time, I guarantee you there's some place in the country that doesn't have power. Has there been any such move?
There is a well-documented model called the Pune model, where the Pune industrialists, including Bajaj Auto and many others, largely in the Pune-Pimpri-Chinchwad belt, which you're familiar with, led by this gentleman, I'm forgetting, Pradeep Bhargav, Pradeep Bhargav led the initiative called the Pune.
I hope he's an IIT guy.
I think he is. He's IIT actually. He's IIT Delhi. And so he actually, this model was a working model where the citizens of Pune agreed to pay some 15 paisa or 40 paisa extra in the evenings from a particular period when these industrial captive DG sets.
And it's been wonderful, and it's great to see that so many IITians and IIMers are helping solve what's probably the most critical part of the development cycle of any country. So thank you all very much. Thank you.